Season 2 of Wolf King kicks off in dramatic fashion. We open on the high cliffs, where King Leopold, the Lion King, stands alone, staring at his crown with pure fury in his eyes. His loyal but nervous assassin, Van Morton, approaches to give him some bad news. Their supplies have been running dangerously low ever since the siege. That siege, of course, was when the other warlords united with Drew, the rightful heir to the throne, to take back what was stolen. Years ago Leopold stole the throne from Drew's father, the true Wolf King. And now the balance of power is shifting. When Van Morton dares to suggest they might think about escaping, Leopold snaps. With a roar, he slashes his claws and sends Van Morton flying across the ground, shouting that his enemies will only ever get his crown when they pry it from his cold, dead hand. From a distance, Drew hears that furious roar echoing through the cliffs. Shaking his head, he mutters that some people just don't know when they've lost. His friend Browen reminds him that Leopold can roar all he wants, but he isn't going anywhere. Drew, still burning with anger, says the truth is he'll only be happy when every last lion is gone. Browen reassures him that if there are any lions still left clinging to the cliffs, his soldiers will track them down. Suddenly, the sound of soldiers struggling interrupts their talk. One of Leopold's men has stolen something, and Drew doesn't hesitate. He leaps into action, using his werewolf powers to spring off the rooftop in pursuit of the thief. As he chases the figure through the streets, he thinks for a split second that it might be his half-brother, Trent. But when he finally catches the thief, Drew realizes he was mistaken. It's just a stranger. Watching from the shadows, Van Morton studies Drew carefully, waiting for his chance. Before long, the ringing of a bell calls Drew back to the palace. His loyal chancellor, Hector, hurries alongside him. Not far from the palace gates, Whitney is busy training young Gretchen, trying to teach her how to control her werewolf powers so she can defend herself. As Drew rushes past, Gretchen gets startled, her powers suddenly flaring to life. Her claws extend and her eyes glow a sharp, icy blue. Inside the palace, Hector complains to Drew, saying he still can't believe Drew gave him the title of chancellor. After all, there were older, wiser lords who expected that honor. Drew just tells him straight. He trusts Hector with his life, and that's what matters. Together, they head into the council chamber. The meeting is tense. Drew apologizes for arriving late, explaining that he had to chase down one of Leopold's soldiers. But this just sets Duke Bergen off. He scolds Drew, saying he's warned him time and time again not to go looking for trouble. The other council members agree. They tell Drew his place is here, ruling and leading, not scrapping with soldiers in the streets. Drew argues back, saying he can't relax while Leopold is still prowling around the keep and while Leopold's son, Lucas, remains free. But Bergen insists he leave the city soldiers to handle it, reminding him of his greater duty. Even Hector adds his voice, telling Drew that the people just got their Wolf King back. They want him alive long enough to actually make it to his coronation. The council presses new responsibilities on Drew, signing treaties, securing the loyalty of the lords across the 7 realms, preparing for the future. Still, the sound of Leopold's roar echoes through the distance, and the old queen herself warns everyone that as long as the Lion King still clings to that stolen throne, Drew's position isn't secure. They must remain on guard, because no one knows where the next threat will come from. Meanwhile, far away from Westland, we see Leopold's son, Lucas. He's gathering an army of his own, preparing to march on the kingdom. Back at the palace, the old queen pulls Drew aside. She advises him that before he can truly be crowned, he must also take a queen. She even suggests Gretchen would be a fine choice. Whitney, overhearing, looks unsettled at the idea. When Gretchen approaches Drew later, he almost blurts out a proposal. But Hector, sensing Drew's nerves, quickly interrupts and covers for him, saying Drew only wanted to take Gretchen for a walk through the city. Hector wants Drew to slow down, not rush things. So Drew and Gretchen walk the streets together, watched from a distance by a jealous Whitney. Gretchen seems hopeful, waiting for Drew to open up. Drew tries, telling her about the queen's advice and hinting that she could be the one. But before he can say it outright, Gretchen storms off, frustrated. She wanted him to ask her honestly and openly, not hide behind vague words. Heartbroken, she runs to her parents' tomb, wishing they were alive to guide her. At that same tomb, danger is waiting. Lucas arrives, ordering Van Morton to capture Gretchen. Her screams echo, and Drew and Whitney rush to her aid. But a lion guard blocks their path, wielding a silver spear, a weapon deadly to werewolves. Drew struggles in the fight, weakened by the silver, until Whitney jumps in to help. After a brutal struggle, they finally manage to defeat the guard, who falls lifeless at the tomb. Hector later takes the body into his chambers, calling Drew and Whitney to him. Whitney insists they should alert the council immediately, but Drew shakes his head. Gretchen has been captured, and it's his fault. He wants to keep this quiet until they know more. Desperate, he asks Hector to use his magic. Hector draws a circle around the lion guard's corpse and summons him back from death under his control. The ghastly soldier reveals that Lucas has taken Gretchen south, to a place where darkness awaits the wolf and his friend. Hearing this, Drew insists on going after them right away. Hector and Whitney try to stop him. Hector reminds him kings don't risk themselves like this. But Drew pushes back, saying this is the kind of king he is. In the end, Hector reluctantly helps him sneak out, even though Duke Bergen has forbidden Drew from leaving Westland until his coronation. Meanwhile, Lucas and Van Morton continue their journey south with Gretchen in tow. She refuses food, so Lucas tries a softer approach. He offers her a flower, telling her he dreams of ruling beside her. But Gretchen isn't fooled. She spits back that she'll never be his queen. Secretly, she plucks petals from the flower and drops them along the road, creating a trail for Drew to follow. Sure enough, Drew and Whitney later spot the petals. Realizing Gretchen is trying to guide them, they push forward with renewed energy. Back in the carriage, Lucas grows frustrated. He finally allows Van Morton to use his dark magic on Gretchen. But Gretchen's powers awaken in defiance. Her eyes blaze, claws extend, and she shoves Lucas back with a burst of strength, escaping into the forest. Furious, Lucas transforms into his lion form and chases her himself. Gretchen's fox-like abilities give her incredible speed and agility, climbing trees and darting through the woods. For a while, she's almost impossible to catch. But Van Morton intervenes. With his black magic, he strikes down one of their own guards, then resurrects the fallen soldier into an undead killer. Gretchen is recaptured and thrown back into the carriage, while the resurrected guard is left behind as a deadly trap for anyone brave or foolish enough to follow. Back in Westland, Duke Bergen explodes with anger when he learns Drew has slipped away. As punishment, he strips Hector of his seat on the council. He sends his son, Bruin, with a squad of soldiers to hunt down Drew, Whitney, and hopefully rescue Gretchen. Meanwhile, Hector starts suffering disturbing visions of the very lion guard he resurrected, as if the dark magic is haunting him. Out in the woods, Drew and Whitney stop to rest, but the forest isn't quiet. They stumble upon an old woman, Baba Korga, tending to her dying husband. Whitney recognizes them as Rory, fortune-tellers from the long ridings. Baba Korga demands to know if they're going to help or just stand there. When Drew kneels to help, he sees the man has a vicious bite wound. Baba Korga explains it was from a dead man walking. Creatures that move but don't breathe, look but don't see. The same thing killed their horse and nearly killed them. She shows them a lion guard helmet, proving who was responsible. Drew and Whitney immediately know it must be the guard Lucas left behind. Baba Korga warns them not to go, insisting you can't kill what's already dead. But Drew doesn't listen. Determined, he pushes onward, with Whitney by his side. But Drew and Whitney are determined. Behind them, Baba Korga gives up hope for her poisoned husband. She knows there's nothing more she can do for him. Tragically, her husband suddenly rises, no longer himself, but a walking corpse. He turns on everyone at the camp, attacking with unnatural rage. Out on the road, Drew and Whitney finally encounter the undead lion guard. The fight is brutal. Every strike seems useless, and the monster just won't stop. Things get even worse when Baba Korga's husband, now turned, stumbles into the fray and joins the attack. Drew and Whitney are overwhelmed, caught between the two undead warriors. But then Drew remembers the silver sword strapped to his side. Summoning all his strength, he drives the blade into both of them. The moment silver pierces their bodies, the walking dead disintegrate into dust. Panting, Drew realizes this can only be the work of a sorcerer, and he doesn't need to guess who. Van Morton is the only one who could have raised them from the grave. When they return to Baba Korga, she opens up to them. She explains that she and her people aren't fortune-tellers as they might have thought. What they do is deeper. They divine the truth from lies. Looking straight at Drew, she says she knows he is the rightful heir to the throne, but also sees his fear and uncertainty. He believes he's alone in this fight, but she assures him he isn't. His friends all have their own struggles and secrets, their own doubts, but together they are stronger than they realize. United by truth and love, they can stand against anything. As Baba Korga speaks, Drew notices Whitney trembling. He asks what's wrong, but she brushes it off, saying she's just cold. What Drew doesn't see is the bite mark on her hand. The poison from the walking dead is inside her now. The next episode begins with Whitney jolting awake from a nightmare. In her dream, she sees herself turned into one of the walking dead, while Drew stands over her, sword raised to strike. She wakes in a panic, the poison burning deeper, and she's terrified. Drew urges her to keep moving. They can't stay in the camp. They need to catch up with Lucas and rescue Gretchen. Whitney tries to stand but nearly collapses from weakness. Baba Korga helps her, noticing the bite wound on her palm. She tells them there's only one chance left. Whitney must find Baron Yuan, a ram sorcerer in the land of Haggard. He's said to be able to heal both the body and the mind. Baba Korga draws them a map and warns that Whitney must reach him tonight, before the poison spreads too far. So Drew and Whitney push onward. They track Lucas and finally spot Gretchen, but Lucas quickly sends one of his guards to block them. The guard carries a silver sword, a deadly threat to any werewolf. Whitney shouts for Drew to be careful, but during the fight Drew gets cut. The silver burns into his flesh, leaving him weakened. Just when it looks like Whitney will be struck down, Drew snaps. With a roar, he transforms fully into his werewolf form and battles the guard head-on. But the silver blade cuts him again, injuring his arm. At the last second, Whitney saves him, kicking the guard off a cliff. Lucas and Van Morton escape with Gretchen once again, and Drew prepares to chase them. But then he notices Whitney is fading fast. She finally shows him the bite mark and tells him to leave her, save Gretchen instead. But Drew refuses. She collapses into unconsciousness, and when she wakes moments later, she finds herself being carried in Drew's arms. He tells her he's taking her to Haggard. He won't let her die. When they reach Haggard, something feels off. The town is strangely quiet, empty. Suddenly, a man leaps out and tries to grab Whitney. Drew goes to fight him, but a horned figure, a wergoat named Count Kessler, steps forward, stopping him. Drew and Whitney are captured and dragged into a building, where they see the townspeople standing in rows, their eyes glaze. They're trapped in a trance. Kessler explains that he's forced the town's old lord, Baron Yuan, to use his sorcery to enslave the people. Kessler raids villages and sells the citizens into slavery, and he's using Baron Yuan's magic to keep them docile. Drew demands Yuan heal Whitney, but the sorcerer warns him to keep their true identities hidden, or enemies will use it against them. Still, Yuan admits the poison may be beyond even his skill. Kessler, unimpressed, orders his henchman Trepoer to throw Whitney into a pit. She's worthless to him if she's going to die. Desperate, Drew blurts out the truth. Whitney is a warlord. Instantly, Kessler's greed kicks in. A warlord will fetch a high price. He commands Yuan to do whatever it takes to save her. As for Drew, Kessler orders the sorcerer to trap him inside his mind trance. Back in Westland, Duke Bergen receives a message from King Leopold himself. Excited, he shares it with the council. Leopold is supposedly ready to discuss surrender. Some of the council members are eager, but Vega and the old queen are suspicious. They know Leopold, he doesn't surrender. Inside the trance, Drew finds himself face to face with a twisted, evil version of himself. The dark figure taunts him, saying if Drew won't take the crown, he will. Meanwhile, Yuan works frantically to heal Whitney. Just as Whitney opens her eyes, Kessler sneers. He plans to take her away, to sell her for a fortune, and orders his men to set the building ablaze, villagers and all, including Drew, still trapped in the trance. Inside his mind prison, Drew battles the evil version of himself. The figure is strong, feeding on Drew's doubts and fears. But then Drew remembers the people who believe in him, the ones who love him. He realizes the evil version isn't real, it's just his fear. That realization robs the dark figure of its power, and Drew breaks free of the trance. He bursts out just in time, joining Baron Yuan to help free the villagers from the fire. Yuan is stunned. No human has ever broken his mind prison. Drew simply declares that he isn't human. He's the Wolf King. Yuan, convinced, releases his people from the spell, and together they fight to escape the flames. Yuan tells Drew that Kessler has already taken Whitney to his ship. She's being sent to Scoria, to be sold to a powerful lord. Drew races to the docks and boards the ship, but Whitney doesn't need rescuing. Using her own strength, she breaks free of her chains and confronts Kessler. The wergoat snarls, but Whitney fights him fiercely, eventually overpowering him and knocking him overboard into the sea. Drew arrives just after, but instead of thanking him, Whitney bristles. She insists she doesn't need saving, she can take care of herself. Meanwhile, in Westland, the old queen and Vega continue warning the council not to attend Leopold's meeting. But the council votes, and the majority decide to go. When they arrive, their fears are confirmed. Leopold mocks them, declaring they misunderstood. He didn't invite them to accept his surrender. He wanted them to hear his terms for theirs. The council is suddenly surrounded by lion guards, arrows aimed at their heads. They've walked straight into a trap. Enraged, Mika, one of the council members, lunges at Leopold. But the Lion King catches him with ease, slamming his claws straight into Mika's chest and killing him instantly. Mika's brother, Manfred, charges forward to avenge him, but Duke Bergen stops him, pulling him back. This is what Leopold wants, reckless attacks that give him more power. Bergen swears they'll avenge Mika, but only with a plan, only when the time is right. And that's how this episode ends, Leopold standing tall, triumphant, while the council realizes too late they've been trapped in his game.